Imagine you walk into a store and see a smartphone selling for $300. You check the same phone online. $200. Same brand, same model, sometimes almost the same distance from the factory. So where did that extra $100 come from? Did the store owner simply decide to charge more? Not exactly, because before that phone ever reaches your hands, it goes on a journey. And almost every step of that journey adds another cost. Let's follow it. It starts at the factory. A phone might leave the factory at a relatively low price, maybe $200. At this point, it looks simple. A manufacturer makes the product. A customer buys it. But the customer isn't standing outside the factory. The phone might be thousands of kilometers away. So now, someone has to move it. And that's where the first costs begin to stack up. The phones are packed into boxes. The boxes go into containers. The containers are loaded onto a massive cargo ship. And that ship doesn't move for free. Fuel costs money. The crew costs money. The port costs money. Insurance costs money. And the longer the journey takes, the more expensive the entire operation can become. But here's the interesting part. The shipping cost isn't always the biggest problem. Because when that container finally reaches an African port, the journey isn't over. It's barely getting started. Now the container has to be unloaded. It may spend time inside the port. There are handling charges, storage charges, documentation, inspections, and customs procedures. Then comes another major factor, import duties and taxes. Depending on the country and the type of product, the government may charge duties, VAT, levies, or other fees. So a product that arrived worth $200 might already cost significantly more before anyone has sold it. And remember, nobody has bought it yet. But there's another hidden cost. Time. If a shipment is delayed, the importer doesn't simply pause the business. Containers can sit, warehouses can fill up, transport schedules can change, money can remain tied up in goods that aren't being sold yet. And in business, time is money. Literally, the longer capital sits still, the harder it becomes to make that money work somewhere else. Eventually, the phone leaves the port. Now it needs to travel inland, maybe hundreds of kilometers. And this is where logistics becomes even more important. A truck has to move it. Fuel has to be paid for. The driver has to be paid. Roads have to be maintained. The vehicle needs repairs. And if infrastructure makes the journey slower or more difficult, those costs don't magically disappear. They are eventually reflected somewhere in the price. Then comes the part most customers rarely see, the middlemen. The importer may not sell directly to you. They might sell to a wholesaler. The wholesaler sells to a distributor. The distributor supplies retailers. And finally, the retailer sells to you. Every layer needs to make money. Not because everyone is necessarily greedy, because that's how businesses survive. Each business has employees, rent, electricity, transportation, storage, security, taxes, losses, and other operating costs. So every time the product changes hands, the economics change. And then there's something even more unpredictable, currency. Imagine the importer bought those phones when the exchange rate was favorable, but by the time the next shipment arrives, the local currency has weakened. Suddenly, importing the exact same product requires more local currency. The factory didn't increase the price. The phone didn't change, but the cost of getting it into the country did, and the importer has a choice: absorb the loss or increase the selling price. Most businesses can't absorb losses forever, so the price rises, and this creates a strange effect. A product can become more expensive without anyone along the chain dramatically increasing their profit. That's the part people often miss. When you see a $300 phone in a store, you aren't necessarily paying $300 for the phone itself. You're paying for everything that happened before the phone reached that shelf. Manufacturing, packaging, shipping, insurance, port handling, customs, taxes, transportation, storage, currency risk, distribution, retail, and the risks taken along the way. But there's an even bigger question. Why can these costs sometimes be so high? One major reason is scale. Imagine a ship carrying 10,000 containers. The cost of moving that enormous amount of cargo can be spread across thousands of products. But once those products arrive, getting them to individual cities, towns, and stores is a completely different problem. One truck, one road, one warehouse, one distribution network. The last part of the journey can be surprisingly expensive. Economists sometimes call this the last mile problem, and in many markets, the last mile can be one of the hardest miles. Then there's infrastructure. Ports matter, roads matter, railways matter, electricity matters, warehouses matter, digital payment systems matter, even reliable internet matters. Because modern commerce depends on all of these things working together. When one part becomes inefficient, businesses spend more time and money compensating for it. And eventually, those costs find their way into prices. But here's where the story gets interesting. This doesn't mean Africa is simply a place where everything is expensive. Far from it. Africa isn't one economy. It's 54 countries with completely different markets, policies, currencies, infrastructure, industries, and trade relationships. Some products are expensive because they are imported. Others are expensive because supply is limited. Some prices are affected heavily by taxes, others by transportation, and sometimes local production can dramatically change the equation. Because when a product can be made closer to the customer, some of those costs disappear. Shorter transportation, less currency exposure, fewer import procedures, faster restocking, and potentially lower prices. So the next time you walk into a store and wonder, why is this so expensive? Don't just look at the price tag, look behind it. Because that price may contain a ship crossing an ocean, a container sitting at a port, a customs document, a truck traveling hundreds of kilometers, a warehouse holding inventory, a currency losing value, a business taking a risk, and several different companies trying to keep the entire chain moving. The product you see on the shelf is actually the final chapter of a much longer story. And once you understand that story, you start looking at prices differently. Because sometimes, you're not just paying for the product, you're paying for the journey.